In this video, we're going to be going over when to use an option set and when to use a database object when we need to set up a list of categories in Bubble. From this, what we're going to do is we're going to provide you with a principle which allows you to define when you should use a database object and when you should be using an option set. So on the screen right now, you can see a comparison chart, which really provides us a framework for determining when to use a database object and when to use an option set. And there's 4 columns here, and to really break down each one and explain it to you, the first column here is updating. So how do we actually update information in Bubble? For a database object, we can jump into our editor, go to the App Data tab, and just manually update the database object information, such as the name in a list of categories, or we can add in a new database object. Additionally, we can actually update the database object through the preview mode of our application, because on the front end, we can add a workflow to be like make changes to a database object or create a new database object. On the other side, with an option set, we can only update an option set or edit an option set through the editor. So we have to go through our data tab and to the option set tab. Now, the second column here is visibility. So for a database object, any changes we make to the database object, just say in our App Data tab, are immediately visible to the final user. So if we change the name in our list of categories or we add a new database object, that will automatically be added to a list which a user can see. On the other side, with an option set, if we add a new option or we add to our list of categories, we have to deploy the application live for that to be visible to the end user. We can't just make the change in our editor, it won't immediately be visible. The next one is security. So with a database object, these can be protected by privacy rules. So we can limit who can see our list of categories or whatever information we are saving in our database objects. With an option set, they are by default public. So anyone accessing our application can view all of the information that is saved in our option set. And then finally, we have reference. So this goes down to how do we reference each of these ones. So with a database object, we reference the list of categories by doing a do a search for in our editor. With an option set on the other side, we use get an option and we can directly display an option on our page. Now, just to highlight that difference in referencing a little bit more clearly, I've jumped over to the editor. And what we have here is we have this age range. So we have a search page where we have a list of profiles and we can filter these profiles based on the age range where a user on our platform can select a different age. And we could set this up via an option set or a database object. And if we are to set it up as an option set, so what you can see here is we have an option set with a series of age ranges. All we need to do is first we need to set the type of option to be age, and then the choice of source is just all ages, and then the option caption is current options display, and then our default value, we can just select a default value here. Now on the other side, if we do have to use a database object instead, what I have to do is I have to go do a search for age. I need to change the types of choices to text. I need to then select each item's age. I need to make the option caption to be do a search for age, each item's age again. So that's, and then if I want to set a default value, I basically have to do a search for age, and then I need to create a constraint to make sure that I'm selecting the correct default option. So what you can see here is the differences between using an option set versus using a search and how that affects referencing. Jumping back, so based on these 4 points that we talked about, we can create a principle. And this principle basically states for when we should be using an option set or when we should be using a database object. And we should use an option set if we have a small list of public items which you will rarely update. Database objects should be used for everything else. So to make that really clear to you, and just to break it down a little bit more, when we should use an option set, it has to meet 3 criteria. The list of categories should be small. The reason why is that for an option set, you need to manually add the items and that the full list is downloaded on every page load on your site. Secondly, the list of categories should be allowed to be public. And then thirdly, we should rarely update this list. If any of these fail, we should actually set up a database object. So to run through an example to make it very clear, just say we're building an application which tracks students in universities and their course information. And what we want to specifically track is their enrollment. So what we have is a field which has a list of items being this full-time, part-time, or remote. And every student should be either full-time, either part-time, or remote. So should we use an option set or a database object to set this up? Because this list is small, there's only 3 items. And then we are going to rarely update this list. We're not really going to have a 4th item for enrollment. And then thirdly, this is allowed to be a public list of items. So we are happy to share the information of either full-time, part-time, or remote. Not whether each student is full-time, part-time, or remote, but just being able to view, oh, okay, you have full-time, part-time, or remote as your enrollment options. That can be public. So because this use case meets all 3 of the criteria, we would actually set this up as an option set. Now, another example is in the same case, we also want to save a list of subjects that each student could enroll into. Now, in this case, the list of subjects that students can enroll to can be public. So we don't have any private information because even students who aren't in our university should see this list as their prospective students. Secondly, we will rarely update this list. The reason why is we only update it once a year at the start of each year when we release our course catalog. And then finally, is this a small list? It isn't a small list because we could have hundreds of courses in our university. Because we could have hundreds of courses, what we actually need to do is we should save this information in our database. And then we can use a do a search for rather than get an option, which is a lot faster at just pulling and showing this list. So this really breaks down when we should be using database objects and option sets.